A millionaire single father saw a black soldier at the bus stop and said, "You're recoming with me," and took her home. Their rain was beating down on the windshield off the Mercedes. When James Morrison saw the lonely figure at the deserted bus stop, he wasn't the kind of person who would normally stop. He had an important meeting in 20 minutes, and his millionaire schedule didn't include spontaneous acts of charity. But something about the woman's bearing made him slam on the brakes. She stood there as straight as a statue, even though she was soaked through. Her military uniform was immaculate despite the storm, her medal shining against the dark fabric. She was a soldier who had clearly just returned from somewhere far away and very dangerous. James rolled down the window. "Hey, are you going to stand there until you freeze to death?" The woman looked at him with eyes that had seen too much. "Thanks, sir, but I'm fine." "No, you're not. Unlock the door, get in." "That's not a request." Lieutenant Diane Collins hesitated for a moment. At 32, after 3 years in the Middle East and an impeccable military career, she had learned not to trust easily. But there was something in this man's voice and authority that didn't come from arrogance, but from someone who knew pain. Got in the car. James Morrison introduced himself, extending his hand. "Lieutenant Collins." She shook his hand firmly. "Where are we going?" "Home." "My home." James watched her reflection in the rearview mirror. "You look like someone who needs a safe place to process whatever happened today." Diane closed her eyes. "I've only knew 3 hours earlier she had been escorted off the military base where she had served for 10 years. False charges of insubordination, destroyed benefits, suspended all because she refused to keep quiet about what she had witnessed on her last assignment." "Why are you doing this?" James was silent for a moment. "Because I recognized the look of Simeon who has been betrayed by thievery system. She swore to protect it." Was a strange answer coming from a man in a $200,000 Mercedes. Diane studied his profile, jaw firm, eyes focused on Tharod, but with a deep sadness that money couldn't hide. "Did you ever serve?" She said, "My wife did." His voice hardened almost imperceptibly before she discovered that some enemies were thieves. "Uniform as you." The car stopped in front of a mansion that looked like something out of a magazine. Perfect lawns, huge windows, the epitome of the American dream. But Diane noticed that something most people would miss: security cameras on every corner, reinforced gates, and James checking his cell phone compulsively. A man who had everything but lived as if he were on constant alert. "Welcome to the fortress," said with a smile that didn't reach us eyes. "My daughter will love meeting Ariel." Hero, the word echoed in Diane's mind with bitter irony. If only he knew that at that moment she was technically homeless, careerless, and had only $300 in the bank, but there was something in the way. James looked at her not as a victim or a charity case, but as an equal. A Simeon who understood that some battles aren't fought on battlefields, but in boardrooms and military courts. As they walked toward the front door, Diane had an idea that she was about to enter not just a house, but the center of a storm that would test everything she believed about justice, loyalty, and the true price of courage. If you've ever wondered how far a person will go to protect those they love, prepare to discover that some revenge is served on fine china, and that your true enemies aren't always across the ocean. Inside the mansion, James watched Diane study every corner of the room with eyes trained to detect threats. She noticed the exits, the cameras, the blind spots, automatic military behavior that confirmed her suspicions about what this man was. "Daddy." A soft voice came from the stairs. A 12-year-old girl appeared, her curly hair framing a facet that blended the delicacy of childhood with a premature maturity in her eyes. "Emma, come meet Lieutenant Collins," James said, the pride in his voice and mystical. Diane bent down to be at the girl's height. "You can call me Diane." "Are you a real soldier?" Emma asked, fascinated. "I was," Diane replied, the word carrying a weight that James picked up immediately later. While Emma watched television, James served coffee in the kitchen. "Do you want to talk about what happened today?" Diane hesitated, then decided she owed an explanation to those who had offered her shelter 3 months ago during my last mission in Afghanistan. I wouldn't have said something I shouldn't have seen Shephouse, the words weighing heavily in her throat, my commander. Colonel Bradley Mitchell was diverting medical supplies for Afghan civilians. He wassailing them on the black market and pocketing the profit. Soldiers under my command were dying because we didn't have enough equipment while he was financing a mansion in Virginia. James leaned forward. Did you report it? I followed the chain of command. Mitchell's second in command, Major Stevens, told me to focus on my own responsibilities. Irony in Diane's voice was cutting. 12 weeks later, during a rescue operation, 3 of my soldiers died because we lacked basic medical kits that Mitchell had sold the week for. What did you do? I documented every. Printouts of the transaction showed those of the supplies being loaded onto civilian trucks. Recordings of conversations. Diane tapped her cell phone in her pocket. When I got back to the United States, I took the evidence straight to the Pentagon. James saw the anger grow in her eyes. And they destroyed you for it. Worse, they accused me of fabricating events and attempting to extort a superior officer. They said I was a problem soldier with a history of insubordination, a history that miraculously appeared out of thin air. And laughed humorously. Within 72 hours, me 10-year career, my pension, my medical benefits gone. Is Mitchell still in command? That only that he was promoted to general last week. Diane's voice trembled with contained fury. Meanwhile, I'm officially homeless, with $300 in the bank and a tarnished military reputation that prevents me from getting any decent job. James was silent for a long moment. Then her surprised Diane with an unexpected question. Do you still have the evidence? Everything backups in 5 different locations? Studied him. Why do you ask? Baker say you may not be the first person. Mitchell silenced, and maybe James paused, choosing his words carefully. Maybe you found someone who knows how to use the evidence the right way. Diane raised an eyebrow. What kind of business do you run? James Morrison, the kind that teaches powerful men that not every war is fought. In uniform, he stood up, walking over to a shelf and removing a from Ed photo. This is my wife Rebecca, or she waist photo showed a beautiful woman in an Air Force uniform, medals gleaming on her chest, a radiant smile on her lips. She discovered that her commander wassailing flight information to terrorist groups, information that resulted in the shooting down of 3 American helicopters. Voice hardened when she reported it. She was charged with treason and espionage. Diane felt her stomach sink. What happened to her? Suicide. At least that's what the official report said. James put the photo away with excessive care. Sheckled me. The night before she died, saying she discovered something big, something that was going to be in Thepperpers. The next morning they found her body at 6 o'clock in the morning. The silence between them hung heavy after the funeral. James continued. I spent every penny I had investigating her death. You uncovered a network of corruption that went all the way to the top of the military hierarchy, but evidence is antenna when the judges are in on it too. So you gave up. James smiled, but there was no humor in that smile. I didn't give up. I changed my strategy. I spent the last 5 years building a military technology empire, billion-dollar contracts with the Pentagon, relations with senators, generals, journalists. Look directly at Diane. Sometimes to beat the system, you have to become a bigger than it. Diane processed the information. You're saying that I'm saying that maybe it's time to teach General Mitchell a lesson about underestimating people. He considers this possible. At that moment, Diane's cell phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Diane Collins, you should have learned to keep quiet. Some truths cost more than a career. They cost lives. A friend. James saw the blood drain from her face. Threats. They know where I am, she whispered. No, James corrected. They know where you were. No, you're under my protection and trust me. Diane, I've learned that the best defense is a devastating offense. Diane looked at the man in front of her, seeing not just a millionaire single father, but a soldier in a different kind of war, a war fought in boardrooms and courtrooms. Sure, revenge was served cold and calculated. Why are you doing this? She spoke again. Because James said, already picking up the laptop. Some coasts only rest when justice finale arrives, and because something tells me are not the type to give up easily. As he typed, the screen lit up with government contract files. Military officer, profiles, and a network of connections that would impress any investigator. Diane realized she hadn't stumbled into any house, she had stumbled into a command center, and for the first time in months, something inside her that had been broken began to regroup, not in despair but in anticipation. Mitchell had seriously underestimated who she really was. More importantly, he had completely underestimated who she had just allied herself with. The war was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 3 days after the threat, Diane's life turned into a meticulously orchestrated bureaucratic negation. Her bank account was frozen under the pretext of a financial irregularity. Her investigation. Her rented apartment, the landlord had received an anonymous tip about suspicious activity. Her former military colleagues stopped returning her calls. General Mitchell wasn't just trying to silence her, he was systematically erasing her existence. He's using the classic playbook, James explained, as he pored over documents in his mansion office. Social isolation, economic pressure, destruction of credibility. His wife went through the same process. Diane held an official letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They need my request for medical assistance. He said that because I was discharged under questionable circumstances. A note entitled to benefits. Her voice trembled with contained anger. 10 years serving my country and now I'm treated like a criminal. Emma appeared at the door carrying a cup of hot chocolate for you, said Shilly to Diane. Dad said you're going through a difficult time. Diane accepted the cup, touched by the kindness. Thank you, sweetheart. Mom was a soldier too, Emma continued. Dad says women soldiers are the bravest people in the world, but not everyone understands that. After Emma left, James leaned forward. I need to show you something. He opened his laptop and navigated to an encrypted folder. For the past 5 years I haven't just been building a company, I've been building and at work. The screen showed a complex family tree of military, political, and media connections. Senators. Mitchell thinks he controls investigative journalists with a history of taking down corrupt officials, military officers who are clean and hate what men like Mitchell do to the uniform. Are you suggesting an information? William suggesting strategic justice. James clicked on another file. Remember Rebecca, before she died, she didn't just get evidence on her commander, she got evidence on an entire network, including a young major named Bradley Mitchell. Diane felt the blood drain from her. Mitchell was involved in his wife's death. Not directly, but he was part of a scheme she uncovered, and when she threatened to expose it, James clenched his fists. Let's just say some accidents are very convenient. The next morning, an unexpected figure appeared at the door. Senator Patricia Williams, a black woman in her 50s, a former military officer known for her crusade against corruption in the Pentagon. James told me about your situation, she said bluntly without beating around the bush, and you've known Bradley Mitchell since he was an arrogant major who thought the rules didn't apply to him. Senator, I appreciate your concern, but I didn't know if. Let me stop you there, Lieutenant Collins. The senator sat down, her presence commanding immediate respect. 6 months ago, my committee began an investigation into military corruption. In the Middle East, we have suspicions, but we need solid evidence. You've appeared as a gift from heaven. Diane glanced at James, who nodded encouragingly. What exactly are you proposing? That we stop playing defensive, Senator, replied Mitchell. Thinks he are just another troublesome soldier can crush. He doesn't know he's messing with an operation that goes far beyond his petty ambitions. James opened a new folder on his computer. Over the past 3 days, while Mitchell has been playing a destroying your life, my cybersecurity team, all ex-military personnel Rebecca helped recruit before she died, has been monitoring all of his communication screen filled with printouts of messages, emails, and audio recordings. She is not just selling medical supplies, James continued, he's selling military intelligence to private contractors, sovereign the government, and using American soldiers as pawns in a personnel enrichment scheme that's treason on multiple levels. Diane murmured, studying the evidence, and the best part, the senator smiled with satisfaction. He's making a presentation to the Senate Defense Committee asking for increased funding for equipment. Moderation will be broadcast live on C-SPAN. Diane Began to understand the plan ya want me to. We want you to show up at that hearing. James said not as an accused soldier, but as the lead witness in a Senate investigation. With backup from senators, irrefutable evidence, and national media coverage, Mitchell thinks silenced you. The senator, a dead Imogen, the look on his face when you stand up in that audience, microphone in hand with the entire country watching that night. Diane couldn't sleep, shepherded around the house processing the magnitude of what was about to happen. James found her in the kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning, nervous, not nervous, determined. She turned to him. You've been planning this for 5 years. I've been preparing for the right moment for 5 years. You're the right moment. Diane Rebecca would be proud. Diane touched the cell phone where Esh kept her original evidence. He really thought that by destroying me he would have destroyed the truth. Men like Mitchell Wallies make the same mistake, James said softly. They confuse silencing the messenger with silencing the message. The next morning, as Mitchell prepared for his triumphant presentation to Congress, completely unaware of what was about to happen, Diane adjusted the lapel microphone that the senator's staff had provided. Remember, James said on the phone, coordinating with his tech. 10th moment she identifies herself, send files to all press contacts immediately. I want it to be too late for damage control by the time Mitchell realizes what's happening. Diane looked in the car mirror on her way to the Capitol. In 48 hours she had gone from a homeless, disgraced soldier to the centerpiece of an operation that could change the entire system of military corruption. But as the Capitol loomed majestically against the blue Washington sky, one question hammered at her mind. Had Mitchell really underestimated the situation that much, or was there something they didn't know yet? Because men who rise to the rank of general rarely survive that long by being completely naive about their enemies. That's when his cell phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I see I found some powerful friends. Diane too? Bad they don't know the whole truth about you. See you at the hearing. Someone who knows your darkest secret. Diane's blood ran cold. Mitchell had discovered something that neither James nor Thesamator knew about, something from his past that could destroy not only her Butavarian, who dared to support her. The congressional hearing room was packed with C-SPAN cameras broadcasting live when General Bradley Mitchell took the podium, adjusting his impeccable uniform laden with medals. His presentation on military equipment modernization, ways about to secure billion-dollar contracts, and another opportunity to embezzle millions. Honorable senators, he began in a confident voice, our proposal aims to protect our soldiers with cutting-edge technology. In the audience, Diane took a deep breath. James whispered to her side, remember when Senator Williams gives the signal, stand up and identify yourself. Rest is in our hands. Mitchell contioned his polished presentation clearly, oblivious to what was come and gone. Fortunately, we face problematic soldiers who spread misinformation about our operations, trying to tarnish their reputation of dedicated officers. That's when Senator Williams leaned toward the microphone. General Mitchell, before you continue, I would like to introduce a special witness who has relevant information about your operations. Mitchell's smile faltered for a split second. Senator, I don't understand Lieutenant Diane Collins, please introduce yourself. Diane rose slowly, and the blood drained from Mitchell's face as if he had seen a ghost. She walked to the audience microphone, each step going in the sudden silence of the room. Good morning, General Mitchell, Diane said, her voice clear and firm. Surprised to see me? Mitchell tried to regain his composure. Senator Williams, this woman was discharged from military service for fabricating evidence, and it is precisely those allegations that is here to testify about. The senator interrupted, but first I would like the public to know what Lieutenant Collins really discovered in Afghanistan. James, sitting strategically at the back of the room, discreetly activated his laptop, and real-time files began to be sent to dozens of journalists in attendance. General Mitchell, Diana continued, do you remember this conversation? She held up a small audio device recording from March 15th at 2:30 p.m. In your command tent. Mitchell's voice echoed through the speaker's colonel Stevens, those medical supplies are worth 50 on the black market. Send them to the usual contact and transfer my share to the Cayman Islands account." The room exploded in murmurs. Mitchell jumped out of his chair. "This is a fake, a montage." "Interesting," Senator Williams said calmly. "Because we also have these photographs. See? Screens in the room filled with images of Mitchell supervising felloading of medical supplies onto civilian trucks, and these bank records," James added, standing up and walking to the front, "showing transfers of $470 to the general's personal accounts over the last 18 months. Mitchell was losing control. Who is this man? He has no authority." To James Morrison, CEO of Morrison Defense Technologies, James replied with a cold smile, "And the man will supply 60% of the communications fees you've used to coordinate your illegal operation systems, which by happy coincidence automatically record all communications for security purposes." Color drained from Mitchell's face. He realized the trap he had used. James own technology to incriminate himself for years. "Senator," Mitchell stammered, "I can explain." General Mitchell. Diane interrupted. "3 soldiers under my command died because you sold the medical equipment that could have saved them. Private Peterson, 22 years old; Private Williams, 24 years old; Private Rodriguez, only 19 years old." Her voice didn't waver. "Once they died while you were buying your 3rd house in Virginia." Silence in the room was deafening. Mitchell tried one last desperate gambit. "You don't know the whole truth about her," he shouted, pointing at Diane. "Shackled innocent civilians during an operation. That's why she was really discharged." Diane smiled for the first time since Ash had entered the room. "General Mitchell, thank you for bringing that up." She turned to the audience. "That is exactly the lie he planted in my filter. I confronted him about corruption." James activated a new screen. "Here is the original report of the operation. Before it was altered, Lieutenant Collins saved 16 Afghan civilians during a Fala terrorist attack, risking her own life." And he read it. "Senator Williams is the recording of the order." General Mitchell gave Tolter that report and create the false charges against Lieutenant Collins. Mitchell's own voice echoed, "Again, destroy her reputation. Make up whatever you need to. She can't look like a heroine. We're tearing her down." Mitchell slumped in his chair, the weight off defeat finally hitting him. All the lethal, the corruption, all the arrogance, all crumbling live on national television. "General Mitchell," Diane said, stepping closer, "you said that some soldiers are a problem. You're right. Soldiers who refuse to remain silent when they see officers betraying their own men are indeed a problem for people like you." The cameras captured every detail of Mitchell's humiliation. His empire of corruption built through years of abuse of power was crumbling in a matter of minutes. James watched with satisfaction as reporters bombarded Mitchell with questions he couldn't answer. The man who had indirectly caused Rebecca's death was finally paying the price. The hearing is adjourned. Senator Williams and General Mitchell, consider yourself under formal criminal investigation. As Mitchell was escorted out of the room by military police officers, he passed Diane one last time. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into," he muttered under his breath. Dan stared him down. "General, in 10 years, I've learned that there are 2 kinds of soldiers: those who protect the innocent and those who protect themselves from the innocent. Today the entire country found out which kind you are." As the doors closed behind him, Diane finally felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not revenge, but justice. The difference was that revenge would have left her empty, but justice was leaving her whole. James approached her in the hallway, crowded with reporters. "How do you feel?" "Like a soldier," Diane replied simply, "for the first time in a long time, like a real soldier." But as camera flashes exploded around them and Mitchell was led away in custody, one question remained: what happens when justice finally prevails? Are some of victories too big to be true, or does the system sometimes really work when the right people come together for the right reasons? 6 months after the hearing that destroyed General Mitchell's career, Diane watched from the window of her new office at the Pentagon. Officially instead to the armed forces with all honors restored, she now headed a new military integrity division created specifically after the Mitchell scandal made national headlines. The irony was delicious. The man who had tried to destroy her had inadvertently created her. Dream job, Major Collins, James corrected. Entering with coffee. Diane had been promoted 3 times in 6 months, a historic redress that became a necessity in military justice. Did you see the news about Mitchell? James nodded grimly. Former General Bradley Mitchell had been sentenced to 20 years in prison for treason and corruption. His fortune had been confiscated to compensate the victims' families. His wife had filed for divorce, and his children had changed their last names. Even more devastating was serving his sentence in a military prison where corrupt former officers were not exactly popular. Had tried to call me from prison last week. Diane continued. He said he wanted to apologize. Did you take it? No, some people confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. I forgave Mitchell for my well-being, but that doesn't mean he deserves a second of my time. Emma came running in, now 13. And radiating confidence. Diane Dad said you won another award. Military Integrity Award of the Year. James confirmed, proudly. This year. Diane looked at the stack of letters on her desk. I get 50 messages a week from soldiers reporting corruption. Division he indirectly created has already investigated 23 similar cases on bases across the country. The phone rang. Major Collins. Senator Williams on line 2. Diane, great news. The bill to protect military whistleblowers passed the Senate. Soldiers who report corruption will now have automatic legal protection. After hanging up, Diane leaned back in her chair. 2 years ago, she was homeless at Abu Stop. Today, she was literally rewriting the rules to protect honest soldiers. You know what gives me the most satisfaction, she said to James, it's not seeing Mitchell in prison, it's knowing that no soldier will ever go through what I did. This law will protect generations. Night during dinner, Emma asked a question that summed it all up. Diane, do you regret reporting the general? Diane looked around the table. James smiling genuinely. Emma, growing up with an unshakable sense of justice and a family built not in spite of adversity, but because of it. Emma, the truth is an expensive luxury, but it's always worth price. Mitchell tried to teach method. Some secrets cost careers. I taught him that some silences cost souls. General Mitchell now shares a 6 feet by 9 feet cell, eating food from a metal tray and counting the 20 years he has left. All of Diane Collins heads a division at the Pentagon, lives in a mansion with the family she chose, and wakes up every day protecting honest soldiers. The best revenge she discovered is not to stoop to your enemy's level, it's to rise so high that they become irrelevant. If you've ever faced injustices that seem impossible to overcome, remember the truth has a strange way of finding its way into the light. Subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove courage always beats corruption.